Welcome to CineQuest Video.
Hello and welcome to CineQuest Video, the podcast that delves deep into those VHS classics to the modern day format and beyond.
Here we are again.
Yes. We're back with the Criterion crew tackling the movie Don't Look Now.
These guys do not fuck around. They just knock this shit down.
Yeah, they're really going forward on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Really an exploration of Donald Sutherland, like traversing.
The sexier of the Sutherlands. Yes.
Well, there's also Kiefer, so.
Sexier of the Sutherlands.
Really standing by that point. Okay, so the Criterion crew is tackling Don't Look Now, and again, for us normal or regular CineQuest groups. Yeah, we are uninformed, uneducated.
Of the highbrow.
Almost, you could say we hate film if we're not going to go down this road.
Right, sure, why not?
And we don't have the artistic merit.
The wherewithal. The intellectual fortitude.
Yeah, you could say that. So, I hope you enjoy this Criterion episode of CineQuest Video.
How about
with your host, Idanya. Enjoy.
Good boy.
Welcome to another episode of CineQuest Video's special Criterion Collection. I am your hostess with the mostest, Idanya, and here with me today is my co-host,
D.A.
and my recurring favorite guest,
Ron? Oh, sorry. I was shocked by favorite guest. I was like, oh my god.
Aww.
There you go.
and my new guest.
I was kind of hoping I was a favorite guest, but I'm Cougar.
And so we like to talk about Criterion movies. We like to watch Criterion movies. Criterion movies are very well known to be pretentious as fuck.
Definitely, yes.
And we are pretentious pricks here.
Just a little bit.
All right, and for today's episode, we are going into Don't Look Now, which holds the spine number of 745 in the Criterion Collection. Release date of 1973, directed by Nicholas Roeg. Nicholas Roeg has also directed The Man Who Fell from Earth, which is very well known because David Bowie comes out in it. He also did Bad Timing and Insignificance. Starring in this movie is Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. Cinematographer is Anthony B. Richmond. And the basics of this story is, so this is still grieving over the accident of their daughter, Christine. John, which is Donald Sutherland, and Laura Baxter, which is Julie Christie, head to Venice, Italy, where John's been commissioned to restore a church. There, Laura meets two sisters who claim to be in touch with the spirit of Baxter's daughter. Laura takes them seriously, but John scoffs until he himself catches a glimpse of what looks like Christine running through the streets of Venice, which is actually really silly. To me.
Well, it's various hallucinations that he begins experiencing that I think kind of play into the whole thing.
But would they really be hallucinations, or is it just...
Definitely.
him?
Yeah, they are hallucinations that he begins experiencing.
Or was it just reality of him, like reality, but him just taking it as his own context?
I think it could be like that. Because, I mean, that was you see, like, a little girl running around Venice. And, I mean, that is a person. I think this movie is all about, like, coincidences and, like, how things, like... tie together, and whether or not it's... purposefully, whether it's like a higher power or like whether it's you just looking too deep into it. And I think that's why there's always like these recurring themes through the movie.
Yeah. Reading into something and seeing it as something else completely. That's because I think the whole movie is kind of like a hallucination in itself. Like the viewer is kind of thrown for a whack. Like you're not really sure what's happening at certain points in the movie. Like it's almost like you're... you and Donald Sutherland are sort of going through something together.
You guys are hallucinating together. Take a tab of acid and just trip out in Venice.
Yeah, because the editing style, which I think is really interesting for, like when was the film made? Like 1970? 74? It
was released in 1973, but it didn't get its release until 1974 because it had a lot of... backlash and a lot of like Ooh, no.
Oh yes, we can get into that later, but yeah, I just like the editing is like really fast, well not fast paced, but there's a lot of like quick cuts.
I would say
There
it
was.
yeah, quick
There
cuts.
was.
Would you call it fast paced? Yeah, there's a lot of cutaways especially, and like I just want to just make just sort of I guess the way that the film goes through like a lot of like certain shots and like certain edits and cuts or whatever, it kind of reminded me a bit of like an Italian horror film from like the late 70s, early 80s.
Like Baba and Argento.
See,
I was
yeah.
gonna
Yes,
say
I was
that.
going to say the same thing. Yeah.
And I feel like you have, similar, views on that, and we can probably get into that too.
The climax, I think, is a very, very good example of that too.
Which one? Climax by
No,
Gaspar?
the climax of
Oh.
the film.
Oh, for sure.
Climax.
Definitely.
I was like,
Movie.
we can talk about
I can
climax.
talk about
Yeah.
climax.
Gaspar, no way.
Yeah. No, but the climax of the film, I mean, the blood. Yeah.
Yeah, so this movie
Very
starts
reminiscent.
off, right, that they're in their English home.
Mm-hmm.
They have 2 children, one's a boy, one's a girl. And you have the little girl playing outside, and it keeps cutting off to the parents that are inside, especially Donald Sutherland's character, which is, what was his name again?
John.
John. It cuts off to him mostly, and he's starting to have that premonition that something's going to happen.
Yeah, something's up.
And so as soon as he walks out of the house and the little boy comes running in, yelling for help, he finds his little girl drowned in the lake or pond that they had there.
Yeah.
Laura starts screaming. It's like the overdub is very strange. I don't know if anyone
Yeah, there's
noticed
moments
that.
in it
There
where,
is.
where
Yeah,
it's off.
that's also very reminiscent of Giaio, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember in
yeah.
our Night Port
Yeah.
episode, you were talking about how Italian cinema is the dubbing.
I don't know if this was a part of that.
Yeah,
but,
in my head, I was like, this feels off. And I was like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
DA was saying this is how Italian
I
cinema
know,
is. So,
dude, right?
so I was like, I'll just stick with it.
Thinking of
So
that
was it
as
made?
this-
It was made around the same time that sort of became a thing, or was it before that?
It was because it was 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was in the 70s. And in the 70s, like the Night Porter
And
and
it's Italian.
and a lot of Argento and Bava stuff were
Argento did the
overdubbed.
best.
Yeah.
Even Salo.
Even Salo.
Those-
Oh God, Salo. Oh God. Garbage.
So yeah, so that happens in the beginning, and then it right away straight up cuts off to them being in Venice. So now they're in Venice, and John's been asked to restore a church, and so they're there and they're having dinner, and then I believe Julie Christie's character, is it Laura? Yeah,
her name
Laura goes into the bathroom and she meets these 2 sisters who claim to know that they have been able to see her daughter, and they have connection to her daughter.
The blind one, she says
Yeah.
she's a clairvoyant.
Yeah, she says that she's clairvoyant, that she can speak to her daughter, and she's telling her, oh no, your daughter's okay, she's very happy. And then Laura faints.
Yes.
And then she comes back and she's cured. She's no longer feeling the sadness, and which John's take is like, how can that happen? That's just not the way things go.
Yeah, and you
It
find
seemed
out.
illogical.
Yeah, and you find out later on in the movie that she's actually had like problems because they mentioned pills. I should take
Right.
my pills again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like we don't know how long it's been, but like, I mean, obviously a child dying, the relationship, like marriage, is gonna be
A little bit
yeah,
tumultuous.
like turmoil and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but like,
grief
you don't
separates
know,
people.
Yeah, you don't know like the situation up front from the
Exactly.
beginning.
And to me, that felt like the central theme of the film.
Yeah.
What grief can do to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love the idea of what it can do and how it can tear people apart in very different ways. Because they are very attached, and yet it still tears them apart in a very, very strange way. I mean, when their child is injured and everything that occurs, they have this sort of dynamic that diminishes their whole entire time in Venice.
Yeah,
and
as
we
it goes
see
on.
it all occur. And I really liked how it all played out and how it all is very allegorically reminiscent and very allegorically kind of in tune with how grief plays into relationships and how we communicate with people.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, because even the most healthy, stable relationships, you throw in grief in there, and
Yeah,
all
it's
we know
bound
is
to.
they had great sex apparently. So if that makes stable relationships,
Yeah, so like right after that whole situation, she's healed and she's telling him like, "Oh yeah, I'm cured. I feel fine, and you should talk to them." And then they have that very, very intense sex scene, which
yeah, oh yeah.
scenes that we're all a fan of. I thought it was
Okay, well, I wouldn't
envelope
say I was a
pushing, I
fan,
would say.
no.
it was very interesting because of the
Interesting.
editing
Yeah,
itself.
the editing
Yeah.
is what does it. I know it's 3 minutes long because I checked the time before it started.
You counted.
And
I rewound it,
It was
like
30
5
minutes.
times as well.
No, I noted it was 30 minutes, and I was like, this is like when the sex scene's about to start. And then when it was over, I checked it again. It was 33 minutes into the movie. So it's a 3-minute sex scene.
Yeah.
I think it could have been a little bit shorter. There is a moment where it's just like, this is going on a little bit.
There was.
A little bit
yes.
too long, but I do like the edits. The edits is basically they're having sex, and as they're starting to have sex, they're starting to dress themselves at like the
Yeah.
afterwards. I think they're going out to dinner
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think the cuts are just fantastically done.
They were very well done. I mean, like you said, when they cut off to the dressing part, they're also cutting off to the sex scene where they're undressing. So as they're undressing, they're also dressing. And it kind of has some symbolism to, yes, they're undressing all of their pain and their grief, but they're also hiding themselves within their clothes. That's what I got off of it, metaphorically speaking. Blah, 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 blah.
They're also separate while they're doing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Like in separate rooms even.
So
like
they're together during the sex scene, of course.
They're
'cause, I mean,
together but apart.
Yeah.
together but apart. And do you want to go ahead and mention that one scene,
Which,
that one with the armpit?
oh yeah. She like licks his armpit.
They both lick each other's armpits.
Yeah.
So.
Which is something you don't really see very often.
Yeah, that was like a
Just
really
passionate
movie sex scene.
It's so played out nowadays. Like, who can say, you love somebody enough to lick their armpit?
that's
People
crazy.
like it. I don't know. I know.
No, that has to be some sort of like really extreme love, because I would not go under somebody's armpit, not even my boyfriend.
No kink shaming
it's a
for me.
fetish, Yeah, no kink shaming. Like
No
we
kink
were saying.
shaming.
Yeah, but I wonder what the symbolism must be out of licking an armpit.
I think that at the time it's just the fact that there wasn't really sex scenes that were like this, and maybe that's the reason it pushed for it. It wanted to be a controversial movie that pushed the boundaries of what sex was in film, and whether it did it properly or not. I mean, it didn't feel very male gazy to me because of the editing, like you said.
Yeah.
I really liked the editing in this film as a whole. Not only the sex scene, yes, the sex scene was great, but as a whole, I really loved the fast cuts and everything. Rapid, it's wonderful. Yeah, I think they were very well done in the sex scene as well. So it worked.
Yeah, for 3 minutes at least,
Yeah, 3
licking an
minutes
armpit,
at
that's
least.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least a little long.
Yeah, it was very
doesn't hurt.
passionate, I could also feel, that John is actually very happy that, Lara was okay. So, they're expressing their love, but then they're going back to their normal state, which is the dressing part, is just going back to what they usually know. So then it carries on, right, to what scene is it? Shoot.
I'm not sure what happens after that, but it is interesting. that
Right?
you mentioned
What can you even call upon?
It is interesting. It is interesting that you mentioned like the juxtaposition of it all, because I think it's one of the things that this film does so well. Like especially if you remember the beginning,
Yeah.
when the daughter throws something. What is she doing? I think she throws the
The ball.
doll.
It's
right?
a ball. She has a red ball.
It's the ball, right? And the wife catches something at the other end of that edit.
Oh, yeah, those are
and
so good.
there's another edit after that where the wife catches a glass, but there's several like that, and I think that it works so well with just as a whole, bringing it all together and making it feel kind of like a cohesive story at the end. It just makes it more effective. I
It
think.
does.
Yeah, that ending is fantastic.
That ball comes out multiple times in the movie. Also,
I didn't notice.
And
one
the
of
red coat.
one of the little
The red
kids.
coat is everywhere, but
Auto
I didn't know
motifs
the
are
ball
always.
Yeah, one of the
Come
little
back.
kids in the hospital. When what's her name? Laura goes there.
Yeah.
She's like playing with the kids like through a window. They're passing that same red ball, And then in one of their briefcases, I don't know if it's when she's packing or if it's after the sex scene, it's in one of their briefcases.
Oh wow!
So like they carry it with them.
Yeah, because she's actually, what happens is that, well, after that, you know, she keeps following the two sisters because she wants to feel more connected to her daughter. But then there is something that happens in the boarding school that her son is at, and she has to leave back to London or England or wherever she's at. England.
Oh yeah,
they
the
go
son,
back to London.
because the son was
son-
like
In a boarding school or something.
Hurt
Her
or
son was
something?
injured in an accident of some sort. Yeah.
And I think that's the scene you're talking about where she's packing and that red ball comes out.
I think the red ball is there.
Yeah, and then throughout the whole motion of this going on, John feels like she never really left because he keeps seeing her running around with the two sisters. Like there's this one scene where they're in a little gondola.
Yeah, but I feel like that's him like premonitioning his death, kind of, because they show that scene later on afterwards. But it's right after he almost falls from checking the mosaics on the church he's renovating.
Yeah.
Which is like a really crazy scene because like he's like it's like a board, right? How exactly does he fall?
It's like a plank of wood on the like that scaffolding that
like
he's
falls,
Yeah, on the
standing on.
scaffolding, yeah.
But there's also like they save him, like he doesn't fall to his death, but there's like a small clip of him falling, and then like he goes and talks to the priest or the bishop, I think.
Yeah, it's the bishop.
The one that is like in charge of all the churches.
I forgot his name.
I don't know his name
I
either.
think he's a bishop, no?
Is he a bishop? Is he a priest? I know they make a deal because she kisses his ring, and he's like, "Why the hell? Like, why would you do that?" Like, that's why he asked her. He asked her a question. Another good thing about that scene is when they first meet each other, he's the bishop. I'm just gonna say bishop. I think that's what it is. I don't know religious.
Yeah,
like,
let's just go with that.
I think yeah. So he goes and he tells them like, these are all God's churches, but he doesn't seem to listen anymore. He's like mentioned something like people don't pay attention, but as he's saying that, like his coat is covering like the cross that he's wearing, and there's like a lot of things like that in this movie.
There's
that,
a
like,
lot of symbolism.
like the
yeah.
little things.
subtleties.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good thing.
And glass is always kind of like a premonition
yes.
of
Yeah.
The glass having broken in.
Like right before
every time something bad happens, there's glass involved.
The glass breaks.
There is.
Right.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, there's also that scene with the mosaics
But
and
Yeah.
the red blood.
But it did equate the actual murder at the end.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it
Like,
comes
at
full
the very
circle.
Because
end,
at the end,
breaks the glass.
everything in this film.
At the end of the
just kinda
movie,
has
he
this kind of
asks,
Ouroboros.
he asked the sisters for a glass of water.
Yeah, water is also a big
Water's
part
a
of the
big
movie too.
Glass
Because of
and
the
water.
drowning.
I mean, they're in Venice. It's like a city on water. So like, there's water
Yes.
throughout the whole
Nice.
thing.
You know, something I really loved about this movie was that it really truly captured Venice for what it is. Like, I hardly ever see any movies that are set in Venice, and if they are, they don't really capture all of the beauty of it. Since I have been,
Indiana Jones and the Last
pretentiousness intended, since I have been, it really felt like Venice to me.
Yeah.
They really portrayed it very well. Whoever did the cinematography, which was actually Anthony B. Richmond, he did great. He did amazing capturing all the scenes
it's
in
a
the
really
city.
good- I actually read something interesting on that. They actually couldn't film at any like famous locations. Then that forced them to film like in like those small alley streets, like those like back end corners of Venice.
Yes.
And I think that's what really made it like feel like you're there in the city.
Authentic.
I
Yeah.
love that they filmed in those. It felt like a very before trilogy, like that they filmed in such little intimate locations, and it really was wonderful.
Yeah, another one of the scenes, which is actually one of my favorite scenes, is the seance scene where she's having that whole
Oh,
seance and she's
yeah.
having
Is
that
she-
frantic Francie's moaning.
Is she
and
having like an
she's
orgasm or something like
Yeah.
that? She's like
I
feeling
couldn't
herself up and
tell.
stuff like
Well,
that.
it's
It's
when
weird.
it's like a reminiscence of the sex between, who was it? Right.
Laura and John?
Right, was it not?
No, it wasn't. It was a little
So-
bit further into the movie.
No. I'm saying this. That's what the moaning, the whole thing was reminiscent of.
Well, yeah, actually, because there was no moaning during the sex scene. It was just
So
music.
what do you think the whole moaning scene was then? What was she?
I think it was just the intensity of it.
The intensity of, because she was like clearly orgasming
Yeah.
sexually. Like, it was
Yeah.
very sexual.
Yeah, it was.
And the only thing would seen before that in the film is the one sex
Maybe she was like tapping into like their.
I don't know, but then that also
psyche.
doesn't really
Yeah.
tap into the daughter. The daughter was not there for the
The
things,
sexy, yeah.
thankfully. So I don't know. That was also something I was wondering, but I liked it. I mean, the intensity of it, like you said, it was so great.
It
but,
was.
I wasn't really
You really
clear
sold
on
the
what
seance.
exactly.
But yes.
That whole scene's
Maybe
really
it was
good.
just capturing the euphoria of everything that happened right before his death, something kind of to juxtapose, because that's something this movie does so much. It juxtaposes things, life and death and everything in between, and especially in the edits.
Yeah.
Addressing and undressing, or like undressing, or everything.
Yeah, and right before they have the seance, Laura's like they're walking to their apartment, and she's telling John like they're gonna try to reach her. Well, I'm talking about the daughter, and
Yeah.
it cuts to both the sisters laughing like hysterically,
Yes,
and then
I
cuts
saw
back
that
to
scene,
them,
yeah.
and it's just like, damn, are they It's almost like they're laughing at them.
Yes,
Is it like-
I thought they were
And I was
laughing
like, wow,
at them.
that's pretty good.
Seems that way. It feel a lot of things like that, subtleties in the film feel that way.
Which at that point I was like, are these people like tricking John and Laura? Like, is that what they're trying to get at?
There's definitely like a sinister aura to those
Yeah,
two.
There
they're
was.
super
That is
creepy.
what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I feel like this film had this very sinister
Yes.
underlying feel that it never got
but
to.
but the city too, like
hitting the,
there's scenes or there's parts where like they're walking and like people are staring at them, and like right when John or Laura like turns to look at them, they like quickly look away and they keep on walking. Or like there's people like staring through the windows.
There
and
was-
like,
yeah.
and it's just like, oh, it's so creepy.
or even everyone around them just kind of seems like they're up to something.
Yeah.
When they talk
like-
to them, it's just like something's going on. It feels very Rosemary's Baby.
yes,
Yes.
Rosemary's Baby.
A recent comparison, Hereditary, kind of like old Hereditary.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, but I felt like it never really brought all that together. It ended up being just about grief and their story in a sort of isolated way.
Yeah, they never really touched on why
Yeah,
everyone
and
was
I
so
wasn't
like,
Yeah.
really like, why is everyone a
There's
fucking
no explanation
weirdo?
to
Yeah.
that.
like
Is
that
it just
official.
because everyone is a fucking weirdo?
Yeah,
That is-
like the murder police people
No.
that he goes talks to.
yes.
Like
No,
that, was that official guy he talks to? It's like a murder.
Oh, yeah, because he
inspector.
thinks-
The cop?
Yeah, the
he
cop.
acts, he
I
acts
remember
super
that.
weird throughout the whole
He
thing.
did. He
Yes,
was
he-
like laughing at him
Yeah.
almost.
Analyzes them very strangely.
Another thing too, that hallway that he goes into his office does not match the door that he like when he goes through the door into the room. Like it doesn't match like the room, like the hallway he walked in through. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, like
I didn't
like
realize
say
that.
for example in a building they all have the same doors.
Yeah,
Well,
like
that,
the door is like super big, but the door he walked in through was like small. Like he had to like
Maybe that's
duck
just
his
a
head to get
That's just bad
continuity
lighting.
error.
I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just like they filmed that shot of him walking in and they use another room
I
to
remember
film
that
him.
shot in the hallway, and I was like, "Oh, that's such a nice shot."
Yeah, it looks really
so
good.
I didn't really
You know,
pay
it-
attention to the next one.
at this point with all the symbolism that this movie has, I wouldn't be surprised if there was meaning to that whole scene, because
Oh yeah,
the reason why he goes to the police is because he thinks that his wife is not actually abroad where she should be because he keeps seeing her, and he also keeps seeing his daughter Christine in that red coat in some instances. So he thinks, no, she's not over there, she's with the sisters are trying to kidnap my wife, or
Yeah.
they're trying to murder her. And so that's why he goes over to the police station, but they
Right.
don't take him seriously at all.
I think they become suspicious of him too.
Yeah, they have
him
I
followed,
do.
yeah.
Like, what is this guy talking about?
Well, I also like too that they don't subtitle the Italian.
Oh, I was gonna ask because I
you-
wasn't sure if that
They
was just
didn't.
my version.
No, because the Criterion
Okay.
channel doesn't have. I put
Okay.
subtitles on, and it actually subtitles in Italian.
It's subtitles in Italian.
Yeah.
for me
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
not gonna give you
And
the
I
full.
was just like, God damn it, I want to know everything they're
Yeah,
saying. It's
but
like
it-
watching Suspiria without the parts like that.
But it makes it feel cool. It makes it feel like you're also like lost
Yeah.
in this like foreign like country or
You're
city.
in the same position they are.
Yeah, because even
Like,
he speaks.
you're in the movie.
He speaks like broken Italian, and Laura doesn't really speak that much Italian at all. Like he orders for her like at restaurants and stuff like that.
He does, yeah.
So so it makes you also feel like this sense of like I don't know where the fuck I am in these like
Yeah.
streets. Like I hear like something like you hear like footsteps and shit too.
Yeah,
like
he
people
hears
yelling.
things and he sees things like you were mentioning earlier, the reoccurring appearance of the red coat.
Yes.
That's the same red coat that his daughter was wearing when she drowned. You know, and it comes also to the hallucinations that we probably think he's having, because he keeps seeing the daughter, he keeps seeing the wife, he keeps seeing things. So at this point, who's crazier, the wife or the husband?
The husband, definitely.
I know. It was like,
Because John thinks that Laura is crazy for believing these sisters, but at the end,
He's seeing all that
he's the
stuff
one that's
too.
seeing all that shit.
I mean, he's following around a little person in a red coat, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland lost his mind in this movie.
The
Yeah.
blind lady says that he has the gift also.
Exactly.
She
That
does.
is a
She,
thing that,
she,
yeah.
she says that like,
That's
oh, he can see
probably
it
what
too.
leads him to his demise.
because he sees things
Wasn't
that
that
aren't
the ending?
what they are.
What? No, that's before they go to the apartment. They meet them while he's restoring the church.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
it wasn't
before
the
she goes
apartment scene. It was the
crazy.
apartment
Well,
scene.
yeah, because that's when he leaves and she's like, "No, bring him back."
Yeah.
bring
Oh my god,
back."
that was so good. It
Oh,
was so intense. I
Yeah,
was so
like, holy shit.
terrified.
I mean, I knew it was coming, but it worked. It worked for me.
That
this
was
time.
definitely the climax of the
Yeah.
movie, where, you know, the ending scene where he leaves, because he goes and drops her off because they're in the police station.
Because they arrested the two sisters.
Yeah,
The
and then
the Venice police.
and then the one that's not blind, the one that's not clairvoyant, she's not there, so
She's
he
like at an
offers-
embassy or some crap like
Right.
that.
Yeah, at the
Yeah.
U.S. embassy, I think.
Or, that would be the British
The
embassy.
UK, I'm sorry, the UK, yeah. And so he offers to drop her off at her apartment, and so they're having their nice conversation, whatever. And then once he drops her off, he's like, "Oh, I should really get going now."
She has like a seizure, I think,
She does.
and that's what forces him
Yes.
to like
Oh, that
be
was so wild.
weirded out and be like, "I'm just
no,
gonna
he had
leave."
already
Yeah.
left, dude.
No, it was as he
Really?
it was as he was leaving.
Yeah,
like,
as
he
he
was,
was leaving.
he was about to
Started having
leave,
it. Yeah, I remember.
and she had the seizure, and he was like, "Well, there's nothing for me to do. Like, I'll just like bounce," and he just
sticks
left.
her hand
The
in
sister
her
was the
hand.
one that
She's like,
prolonged
like,
it.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
But that death scene, though, that coming to circle from the very beginning to
It's
the very
fantastic.
end, and the chapel and the blood just spreading.
Well,
It
the,
was so
the
good.
match cuts are what made it so effective. Seeing all of it, just yeah, that's great.
It was good, yeah. But another question that I have for you guys is, why do you think there was so much controversy over this film? Because it was banned.
I think it's
It
just
has-
the
it's-
sex.
it's the sex scene.
The sex scene.
Sex.
Definitely.
But I mean, let's say, for example, DA and Ron, we've already discussed the Night Porter, and we already had known that this had the same controversy. Have you seen the Night Porter, Cougar?
Mm-mm.
You should.
You should.
I will.
It feels pretty good.
You know, I could understand the controversy over the Night Porter. I cannot understand the controversy over just a sex scene, which wasn't even a sex scene. It was just passionate kissing.
I think
think-
it's he goes down
okay.
on her, and I think that's what it is.
Okay.
It's
It's taboo.
It's a very clear shot of him like going down on her, and you
Right.
see her bush and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the, I feel like
Yeah.
that's the reason. That's
Okay.
when they're
Yeah.
like, no, we can't have this.
Yeah,
outside."
like, in the 70s, it's like, okay, you can have, your missionary, you can have, but anything else.
And it's also very passionate too. Like
It gets really into it. It
Yeah.
reminded me. I don't want to say it because I know that film is kind of taboo in a lot of ways, but Blue is the Warmest Color.
oh yeah,
Just
Oh,
like
yeah.
a very short and kind of how passionate they got into
Yeah.
it in that.
Like, it
film.
feels real.
It feels very raw, and I think that rawness and how extenuated it is on film, and it just goes on and on and on and on, is a big reason for its controversy.
Yeah, it's 1973
Yeah, it's
also.
just, that's the 70s for you. People didn't want to watch people have sex for 3 minutes straight.
Unless they go to the porn theater.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was also common at the time.
It was.
So they would've
Where else
rather
are you going to watch your porn?
Exactly. Where
The local
might as
smut
well gone
house.
there. But they were mad that this wasn't in a porn theater. So
A guy goes down on a girl, and that's a controversy.
it is
1973 it was.
It's the 70s,
Yeah.
man.
That's more like a blessing in 1973. Jesus. But yeah, that's why I didn't understand the controversy of this film. This is why I chose this film, because not only did it have a lot of controversy, but I know that DA was also very adamant about it.
Well, no,
Yeah.
for me, no.
Yeah.
One of the reasons
He
I know
was.
that I didn't like it was the film felt. I remember the first time it felt so sluggish. It just didn't really do anything for me. I got that it was about grief, but it didn't really drive the message home. And it reminded me so much of Rosemary's Baby without the closure of Rosemary's Baby. And I think that's what made me mad.
Because it's just
and the
ends.
symbolism at the end, I also wasn't really a big fan at the end the first time I watched it, I think. And yeah, like I said, I went from a 1-star rating the first time I watched it. To this rewatch, I went to 3.5. I loved it. Like I not loved it, but I really appreciated the cinematic aspect of it, the editing, and so much that went into this. There's a lot of intricacy that I took for granted, I think. And now that I'm not just clouded by it, I do think there is a lot of parts in the film that drag, that can just be cut out.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Aside from that, there is a lot of thematic importance in the film that does capture the importance and the effects of grief in a relationship very effectively. And that's why the film, in my opinion, is...
Yeah, I have to admit, though, the editing was superb. The cinematography really set the tone for the creepiness in the whole setup of Venice. Like, Venice, to me, is not the way that it was portrayed in that aspect of creepy, but it was very realistic as to how it looked.
I'm scared of Venice now. I don't want to go there.
gorgeous.
Exactly.
I
Like, it made you be scared. Like,
loved it.
that people are going to be staring at you and that you're going to be hallucinating and shit about your dead daughter that you don't even have.
Turn the wrong corner, end up in the wrong alleyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
God.
End up in a Magnum shop. But yeah, no, but going back to that death scene, though, once he dies and it all comes full circle, what do you think was the meaning behind that end scene? Because it presents itself in the very beginning while, Christina's outside playing and you see the mosaic and you see the blood dripping, and it's the same blood that drips at the very end scene. It's the very same clip. What is the significance of that?
I think it all goes down to, like what I said earlier, like there's coincidences, whether it's intentional or not. It's all these things that just makes you think, like, damn, that's the exact same way that this stuff happened. Yeah. Like, there's all these things that are similar. I forgot, like, there's a word for it, and I don't know exactly. I can't remember what the word is. There's a word for, like, when you find certain things, like...
Deja vu.
Yeah, I guess something like that. But I feel like that's what makes it so scary, because, I mean, it's like... It's some real shit. It's not like a monster, or it's not like a killer with a, even though it is like a killer with a knife. But it's not like Jason or like Michael Myers, something like that. That's like chasing you down. Like, it's shit that probably could happen. Like,
yeah, it's
like in
the
real life.
Realness. Yeah. What about you, Cougar? What is your take on this death scene?
I just think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of very rare where the victim is the one that's chasing the killer. You know what I mean? Because he's chasing what he thinks is, his daughter, or
at least a kid. Yeah.
Something that he thinks is his daughter. It's reminding of his daughter, and that's just what leads him to his own demise. So I think that maybe the idea of going after or pursuing something that's gone could potentially lead to your own.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily death, but
He was his worst enemy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He could have said easily that Laura was the one that was crazy, but at the end, he was the one that wasn't really over the death. He wasn't really, he hasn't really accepted the death of his daughter, and so he's the one that's not letting go. Laura's already moving on, and maybe with the sisters or without, but he's the one that's still finding excuses not to let it go, because he still keeps seeing his daughter, and he still wants to believe that she's still alive. Yet at the end, after his pursuit, he's the one that ends up dying in the same way that kind of would resemble his daughter, both in the drowning and then he just falls. It was just meant to be.
Yeah, and he saw it coming.
Yeah, that's exactly what I liked about the end, and it's exactly what Ron said. Like, it comes full circle. He, at the very beginning, like, he bleeds, I think, right in some way, like, he
Oh, he
cuts
ruins
himself.
the negative. I don't.
He
Yeah,
ruins the negative in
He
some
does
way,
in the
and he
beginning.
bleeds onto. I don't know if it's in the beginning or kind of towards.
I think it is. It is the beginning.
The beginning.
Yeah, it's when it's before she
he
drowns.
bleeds onto it, and I mean it's quite literally his own blood, symbolic. I would say
Of
of
the
his own
same
death.
blood
Yeah.
that spreads. And
And yeah, all it comes full circle in a lot of ways. A lot of things do in this film.
Leading up to his death too, his wife's running through the between like the boats, and it kind of and it mirrors.
He sees his wife on the boat with the two women,
Yes.
mirroring after he is deceased, and he has the whole delusion that she's still there.
No, but it's also too like when she's running to him, it's almost like him running to his
right,
daughter.
Yeah.
And then also too like when because he closes the gates and like locks it.
Yeah.
And then when she goes to the gates, like she's sticking her arms through it, and she says my darlings.
Right.
Which is like both of them, which is like him and the daughter. It's
And
like
the daughter, yeah.
Like she knew at that moment that like they were both together and that they were both gone. I don't know. That's just like a really
Yeah.
powerful like
Damn.
moment.
That
I love
was-
that.
Yeah.
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 That movie's great.
It's
I like this
great,
movie.
yeah. It does. It captures a lot of what grief does in a really metaphorical ways that
It does.
are very different and effective in interesting ways.
So, what about the final opinions, guys? So, final ratings, final opinions. Ron?
I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna do. Screw it. I'll do 4.5. I like this movie a lot.
You did like
Yes,
it a lot.
I like
Why?
it a lot. It's just, I don't know. I like the themes of it. I like that there's the subtlety and like how scary they make the city look. I don't know. It's just a really good movie. I was like, it starts slow, but I think I would say after the sex scene, it's like when it really starts
That's when it starts to go through.
picking up, and like I don't know, it's just like a mystery. Like, are these ladies really what they say they are? Is this lady even blind? I know her eyes are all whited out, but there's moments where she's like looking at people, and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I wish they would have gone more into like why Venice is like so weird, but.
Yeah.
I like what
Should
we
be
got.
like a subgenre of films, like
Well,
Venice
this-
films.
The psychic medium, like you said, that would have been a very, very cool.
Yeah, have some
Yeah.
backstory on that.
subplot to explore, because it was a great subplot, and especially with the surrealism going on in the film, the overlays that go on in the film. There's even one with just her eyes, and then it melts into like clouds. It's just so great. If they wanted it, that's something that they could have fleshed out.
Yeah, because you don't even know if there is a supernatural aspect of this story.
You just believe it and take it at
Yeah,
face value.
it was almost like he's just wrong place, wrong time. I mean, that's probably like what the
Yeah.
people in
Yeah.
Venice like are just gonna chalk it all up to, but you don't really know. Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
did those old ladies really like see the daughter?
Did they really intend to help her?
Yeah, because they
Well,
seem
I
really
mean,
like
she knew
sinister.
that he was gonna die some way or another.
Yeah, she said he wasn't safe in Venice.
She wasn't safe, and she knew right when, like, she's like, go get him, right when he was gonna die.
Yeah, she had that whole
So
frantic
she knew
scene.
in some way or another. I do think there was some supernatural force. It's just not really clarified how or in what way it manifests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Cougs? What's your rating and your opinion?
My rating, I would probably give it about a 3.
Ooh, why?
Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of great ideas in the movie, but to go back to what you were saying, it is kind of slow a lot.
Yeah.
At the time, it kind of moves kind of slowly. I like the ending. The ending's great. I think it really wraps up the whole thing really well, and yeah, like, I mean, I enjoyed the film. If I could sum it up, I would say time is fluid, grief kills, and communication is very important.
There you go.
pretty
And
good.
licking armpits.
Yeah, oh God.
And
Okay.
red paint blood.
Red
Red
painted.
paint.
Oh, yeah, because it
was-
looked more like paint.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was,
when- yeah, when-
Yeah,
Yeah.
that classic like 70s
Dude,
era
like
like paint
Argento
blood.
style of-
Yeah.
No. That gave Argento a run for his money. That shit
looked
was like
orange.
painting.
Yeah.
Someone just squeezing a pink paint bottle.
Not even a pink paint bottle, a tomato.
Tomato. It could have been.
Tomato.
It could have just been, some squashing tomatoes. Just a bunch of people and
Could have been just ketchup.
underneath.
And but Donald Sutherland, he sold it.
Yeah,
did.
Donald
He's
Sutherland
one of the more
good.
he's one of the more I think like underrated like
He was absolutely
great
fantastic.
Canadian character actors, I think, of all time.
He was
He's
absolutely
really good.
fantastic.
Yeah, this was a very good part for him to
Mm-hmm.
play. He really sold it to me. What about you, Da? What's your rating and opinion?
I would. I'd say this is a 3.5 out of 5 for me. The first time I saw it, I did not like this movie. Gave it a 1 star, but no, I've come around. I really, really appreciated it. I really like the editing style a lot. It really, really just brings so much of it to life, and I think it makes so much of the metaphors connect. Even though it does get slow, it makes up for it.
There are
somewhat,
slow
for the
scenes.
most
There
part.
are.
The final act it delivers. It reminded me a lot of like Rosemary's Baby, like I said. Also Repulsion, I guess it just reminded me of Polanski a lot.
of
just without-
Polanski
of Polanski.
reference.
It reminded me also of Possession, but Possession came out after. But just that sense of dread that it builds, which has a lot to do with Venice. Venice is so beautiful in this film, but also so dreadful,
Yeah.
which I love and makes me want to visit Venice even more. And it reminded me of Suspiria.
In a way,
surprisingly, not old Suspiria, but Guadagnino Suspiria from last year. Those fast zooms,
Those tones.
yes, the tones, the color palette. So much of this, I don't know. It's almost. It feels like I would definitely not be surprised if Guadagnino took some sort of influence for Suspiria 2018.
Most likely.
From this movie, because it is very similar.
Yeah,
tonally.
so the palette, like, red's hardly in this movie.
Oh, yeah?
Except for-
Only when it's blood, when it's
and
the
then
coat.
when it's blood,
when
it's
it's important.
totally like it just looks totally ridiculous on purpose
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
Well,
make it really pop.
My rating would have to be a 3.5.
Yay,
I'll
twins.
give it some good, thumbs up for the poetic, kind of metaphorical storyline that it had. It had a lot of artistic value into it. I really enjoyed the tones. I really enjoyed the way that they portrayed Venice, because Venice is very well known to be a beautiful city, but in this case, it was very creepy, very macabre, if I said that right.
Yes, it's very macabre.
And so the actors in this movie, even though it was just mostly these two people with these two sisters, the characters, they all had their one thing that you wanted to know about. Like John, you want to know what's going on in his head. You want to know if Laura's really okay. You want to know if the sisters are really trying to help. There's always a little mystery to every single character that makes you wonder, okay, what's their purpose? What is the meaning to all of these things that are going on? I really did like the usage of color in the red scenes with the blood and the coat and the ball. There was a lot of symbolism behind it, so I appreciated that. But I do have to admit, it was very slow. It was kind of like background noise for me, background watching, so it didn't really grasp my attention the way that I wanted it to. Because there are movies like The Night Porter, which we did previously, that really just grab you with their really hard scenes, and being that this movie is known to be controversial, I expected a lot of more controversy out of it. But I didn't really see it happening. The erotic scene was really good. I really liked the metaphors behind it, but other than that, it was a little bit laggy. So 3.5.
Understandable.
Yeah.
The way you talk about it, I feel like tonally you would love Possession if you haven't seen Possession, just because Possession is like everything that this movie doesn't do right.
So
Right.
Possession has all the action pack,
No, it
RoboCop
isn't.
style.
It isn't. It is very character driven, but its execution. It's so you're so engrossed in everything that happens, and it becomes such a cathartic experience with the characters. And I feel like that's one of the issues that Don't Look Now has. You kind of enjoy the ride, but you don't have this sort of really, really deep connection that you should have with the characters, despite the fact that it's about grief, where you should have a very, very deep connection.
That's the thing. I wanted the
Because
attachment.
It's about grief. There are so many films about parental grief that have done this so well. But and I'm not saying this isn't one that hasn't done it well, but I do think it is lacking in a sense. It could have tried and fleshed out a little more instead of having a 3-minute sex scene. But you know,
No, but I think
whatever
that sex scene
works
was
for
important.
your-
though.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. It
That's how
doesn't
long
make
I
it
last.
a bad movie. It was good. I just, I can't be mad that it's not the movie I want it to be either. It was very creative and very stylish, and I think that's something I don't give it credit. I haven't really talked about it. It has so much style, and that's what I enjoyed about it. I didn't really think about that the first time I saw it, but yeah, those zooms and those cuts and everything about this editing and the cinematography and the color palette has a style that is kind of making it a sort of genre all of its own, which I liked.
Yeah. Touche.
Yeah,
Good
it
point.
doesn't make for a incredible film, but it makes for a good film, and definitely for a very well-made film from a filmmaking aspect.
Okay.
I'd say.
And final question: does this deserve to be in the Criterion Collection?
Yes.
Sure.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do
definitely.
agree.
Oh yes.
It's got a unique style on its own, and I think the Criterion deserves a type of movie like that. And
It does. Yeah, it was very, like I said, it was very poetic, very metaphorical, very artistic, and it spoke on its own volume,
Yeah.
Very subtle.
I like DA said, like as a filmmaking aspect, as a like purely filmmaking, like a lot of work had to go into this
Yeah.
movie, especially all the
Yeah.
themes and like having to be like, oh, we need to have. I mean, there was even like red spots like underneath their cups of water in the hotel they're staying at.
Uh-huh.
Like it's just
I
little
didn't
stuff like
catch
that.
that.
Yeah, it's
I-
just crazy.
I love quick cuts so much, so I kind of really like that about the movie. It reminded me of Big Little Lies
Oh,
and
yeah.
Sharp Objects. They
Yes.
do things. I love that editor so much, and so, it's just they're so great, and it's very effective when done right, and that's something this movie does right.
Yeah, it does. Neat quick cuts.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're closing this down. If you guys want to plug in your social media, just want to remind everybody to follow MoQuest Studios on Instagram, Twitter, and we also have a Facebook page. Ron, do you want to plug in your
Twitter, it's at Ron Vega 92.
Cougs?
you can follow my Instagram, the Cougarza.
That sounds about right. DA?
Instagram is calcium waste, and Twitter is the same calcium, but it's a calcium_waste.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, mine,
Oh.
you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. It's Idanya Su. It's IDANYASIOUX. All right, closing down, and thank you for listening.
Bye, guys.